Hello petals, my name is Anais. I am a womb witch, a Rahani energy teacher, and a plant alchemist. Under Unfurling Alchemy, I guide women in reconnecting with their power, awakening their essence, and step into sovereignty. In these episodes, I am going to approach topics around womb mysteries, energy healing, and cyclic living. Hello petals, in this episode I want to talk to you about something that I think a lot of women carry without ever really questioning whether it is actually true, and that is the belief that you are too much. You know the feeling. You walk into a room, into a space, and something in you immediately, consciously or unconsciously, starts calculating. How much of yourself is it safe to bring here? How honest can you actually be? Whether the full version of you, the one with the big feelings and the opinions and the depth and the fire, is going to be welcomed, or whether you need to arrive as the edited version of you, the manageable one, the palatable one, the one that does not make anyone uncomfortable. And most of the time, without even really thinking about it, you unconsciously choose the edited version. Because somewhere along the way, you were taught that the full version of you was too much, too emotional, too sensitive, too audacious, too sensitive, too driven, too honest, too loud, too passionate, too assertive, too deep, too wild, just too much. And if this lands in your body as you are hearing it, this episode is for you. Because I want to tell you something really clearly that I wish I had known earlier in my life, is that you are not too much. You have been around the wrong people. And you have been living in a world that was specifically designed to make you believe otherwise, to make you believe that you are too much. Because that belief that you are too much does not just arrive out of nowhere. It is built slowly, over time, over years, through the accumulation of stories, of moments where the people around you could not hold what you were bringing to the table. And for some of us, this may have started in childhood. That was the case for me. And that can look like a parent, a teacher, a sibling who told you to calm down, to stop being so dramatic, to not be so sensitive. A household where your big feelings were just uncomfortable or inconvenience or even just not allowed. And so you learned very early on to turn down the volume, to contain what you felt, to make yourself more manageable so that the people around you would be more comfortable. You know, the kind of vibe of like children are there to be seen, not heard. Maybe in your case, it came on later in life. In friendships where your depth just was making people pull back. In relationships where your intensity was met with distance. In workplaces where your passion was labeled as being difficult, or where your honesty was labeled as being aggressive or not a team player. And then there are the spiritual spaces, because I think that there is a particular kind of disappointment that comes from walking into a space that is supposed to be about depth and about authenticity and about realness, and finding that even then, even there, even in that room, the full version of you can still be too much. And I have been in a spiritual space recently where my authentic self, the swearing, the spicy, the mischievous, the fully alive version of myself was still making people uncomfortable. Still too much, still requiring management. And yeah, that is worth naming honestly, because finding your spiritual community does not automatically mean that finding people with the capacity for the full authenticity of you. Spirituality does not equal openness. healed does not equal spaciousness, or being in a spiritual space does not mean being healed. And the question that I found myself sitting with in that room was not, what is wrong with me? It was, do I make myself smaller, or do I change the room I am in? And somewhere along the way, across enough of those moments, I promise you that you stop questioning wherever the room is wrong, and you just start accepting that you are the problem, especially when this is something that you have come across since childhood. But here's really what I need you to hear. This did not start with you. And it did not even start with the people in your life who could not hold you. It started much further back than that. And for me, understanding the cultural, social, historical context and really remembering that has been an absolute game changer into understanding just how deeply rooted this belief that as women we are too much is. And that is that for centuries, women's wildness has been tamed. Women's voices have been silenced. Women's power has been feared, controlled, diminished, and punished, right? And not only in the witch trials and the witch wound, but also in many other aspects of our history and our society. The women who spoke too freely were hysterical. The women who felt too deeply were unstable. The women who took up too much space were difficult. And the women who knew their own mind were dangerous, right? A woman that trusts her own body, her own knowing, her own inner authority, that follows her inner compass, she was, and maybe still is, the most threatening of all. And so the system was built over generations to ensure that women learned to make themselves smaller. Religion told women, or many religion told women, that their nature was shameful. Medicine pathologized our emotions. Culture rewarded women who were more agreeable, palatable, manageable, and punished those who were not. Education system taught girls above anybody else to be more quiet and complacent and compliant. Workplace built their structures around the idea that ambition and softness could not coexist. Relationships were often designed around the expectation that women would just give more, need less, and never ask for too much. And it worked. Not perfectly, not completely, because women have always resisted. Women have always been rebellious. And women have always found ways to carry their wildness even when it had to be hidden. But it worked enough. Even in our societies, we're not talking about other places around the world, but very much within our European, UK setup. Enough that most women alive today have internalized to some degree the belief that they are too much, that their feelings are too big, that their needs are too demanding, that their voices are too loud, that their power is too threatening. And you did not arrive at that belief that you are too much because of some personal failing. You arrived at it because you were born into a world that has been telling women exactly that for a very, very long time. And then the personal experiences, the childhood messages, the relationships where you were too much, the workplaces where you were labeled as too difficult, the spiritual rooms where even there your authenticity was uncomfortable, those were not random. They were the individual expressions of a much wider, much older, much more systemic story. A story that was handed down through your mother and her mother before her. A story that got into the bones of our culture and the bones of your family and eventually into your own bones so deeply that it just started feeling like the truth of who you are. And it is not the truth about who you are. It is a story that was told to keep you manageable, to keep you small, to keep you from accessing the full breadth of your power, of your voice, of your wildness, of your knowing. And you have every fucking right to refuse it. And I want to inject here a little bit of a personal story that you may have already heard glimpses of this if you have been following the podcast, but I was a sensitive kid. I was a sensitive child with like deep feelings, a lot of fire. And I was told again and again and again that I was too much, too emotional, too reactive, too sensitive. And the message was just consistent. And it came from multiple directions. And so I did what every child would do when they receive this consistent message about themselves. They start to believe it. And I spent a very long time trying to be less feeling, less expressive, less depth, less present to my own feeling, less of whatever it is within myself, within my expression, within my frequency that seems to make other people really uncomfortable. And I thought that that was the work, making myself more manageable, making myself more acceptable, more palatable, more easy to be around, making sure that I was making sure that everybody else was comfortable. And what I found in those environments was that no matter how much I edited myself, I still did not quite fit. Because the editing was never about making myself genuinely more compatible with those spaces. It was about making myself small enough to be tolerated in them, to dim my life enough to be accepted in them. And there is a profound difference between being tolerated and being met. And then something shifted, not all at once, rarely is it all at once, but gradually. As I started doing more of the work around my self-worth and my unconditional love and reclaiming my voice, activating my power and really connecting to that inner compass that lives within my womb space. And from that space, I started finding different places, different spaces, and different people. And I started to encounter something I had not much experience with before. People who could actually hold me. People who did not need me to be less. Who were not overwhelmed by my depth or my sensitivity or my intensity. Who actually wanted more of it rather than less. Who met me where I was rather than pulling back when I arrived fully. And in those spaces, something happened that I really didn't expect. I stopped feeling like too much. Not because I had changed. Not because I had changed, but because my environment had. Because I was finally in rooms that were big enough for who I actually am. And that experience told me something that I want to pass on to you clearly. The problem was never you. The problem was the rooms you were in. And the story behind those rooms that told everyone, including you, that women like you needed to be smaller. Here is something that I really want you to understand about the too much label. It is not about you. It is information about compatibility. And it is the residue of a culture that has never known what to do with women in their full power. So when someone tells you that you are too much, what they're actually telling you is that you are too much for them, for their capacity, for their depth, for their comfort level, for what they are able to hold. And that is real information. But it is information about them, not about you. Think of it this way. The water is not the problem. The container is. And you have been spending years trying to be less water instead of finding a bigger container. The people who are right for you, the friendships, the teachers, the relationships, the communities that are actually your people, they are not going to find you too much. They are going to find you exactly right. They are going to be relieved to find someone who goes where they want to go, who feels what they feel, who is not afraid of depth and honesty or intensity or the full spectrum of the human experience. And those people exist. And they are looking for someone exactly like you. exactly like you. But here is the thing. You have to stop shrinking yourself before you can find them. Because if you keep arriving in places as the edited, reduced, carefully managed version of you, you will keep attracting people who are comfortable with that version of you. And the full version of you just remains hidden. And the right people will walk right past because they cannot see her. The full version of you is the one that will call in the right people. Not the edited one, the real one. And I know it can be scary because it can be lonely, because there might be an in-between where you are learning to be in your full power, where you're learning to be in your full light without dimming. And that clearing a lot of space around you and creating this level of loneliness. But it's only when you are in that version, it's only when you are in that frequency, when you shine the light in that way, that you will be able to attract the people that will embrace that full light. I do also want to say something about the parts of you that have been the most consistently labeled as too much, because I think they deserve to be named differently. Your sensitivity is not a weakness. It is an extraordinary capacity to feel what others cannot, to sense what is happening beneath the surface, to be present to the full texture of life rather than skimming across the top of it. And in a world that rewards numbness and dissociation and calls it strength, your sensitivity is an act of resistance. Your intensity is not a problem. It is what happens when someone actually cares, when they are fully present to what they are doing and who they are with, when they bring their own whole self rather than a managed portion of it. The world is full, so full, of people just going through the motions. Yeah, we have enough of that. And your intensity, it's the opposite of that. Your wildness, the part of you that has been tamed and managed and told to behave, that is not something to be fixed. That is the part of you that knows things before your mind has caught up. That feels the truth of a situation before anyone else has named it. That moves towards what is real, what is raw, even when everyone else is moving towards what is comfortable. Your wildness is your most direct line to your own knowing. And a world that tried to tame it did it because a woman who trusts her own wildness is so very difficult to control. So those are not flaws. They are the fullness of a woman who has not been completely broken by a world that has tried very fucking hard to break her. And they are exactly what the right people will love about you the most. So stop taking the too much label as truth. Everything you catch yourself editing yourself down, apologizing for your presence, making yourself smaller to make someone else more comfortable. Pause. Catch yourself as you're doing it and pause. And ask yourself whose comfort you're actually serving here, and whether it is worth the cost of your own self-expression. Because every time you shrink yourself for someone who cannot hold you, you reinforce the belief that the full version of you is not acceptable. And that belief is a lie that was handed down to you by culture that needed you to believe it to control you. And it gets louder the more you act as if it's true. So start just paying attention to how you feel in the different places, in the different spaces, with different people. Because your body knows. There are rooms where you feel yourself expanding, where you feel safe to bring more of yourself, where the conversations go where you actually want it to go. And there are rooms where you feel yourself contracting, where you feel the need to monitor, to edit, to manage, to think about saying something.
So pay attention to that, because those contracting spaces, those relationships where you consistently feel like you're too much, they are not your home. And you do not need to keep trying to fit in them. And be willing to be fully yourself even before you have found the people. Like I was saying earlier, because I know there is the temptation when you have spent a long time being too much is, to keep hiding until the right people show up. But the right people cannot find you if you are hiding. You have to be willing to show up as yourself fully, even in the uncertainty of not yet knowing who you will be able to meet once you're there. And honestly, again, speaking from experience, I wouldn't change it because I learned so much of it. But definitely when I started finding my spiritual community in Southampton, where I am based, I was very much in the edited version of me. I was very much dimming my light to make everybody more comfortable, because I have very strong catalyst lines within my frequency, which means that my energy field can be quite unsettling for people to start with. It will really highlight where they're out of alignment. It can be really triggering for people. And I had a lot of awareness around that. So I was really trying to dim it down, because I was in a very lonely place and I was really craving like that spiritual community. So I kind of was just trying to fit in with the first people that I found. And don't get me wrong, some of those relationships are still very much present in my life. I have some dear, dear sisters that I have met in that flavor of my life, and where I have been able to bring more of my light gradually, and then in this big explosion through like the expansions that have happened over the years. But there is also a lot, and actually the majority of those relationships that fell away, and some in graceful ways and some in really painful, heartbreaking, heart-aching ways. And that being because once I started to stop the dimming, those people were not able to hold me. They wanted me to stay smaller. They wanted me to stay in that version that they had met, because I hadn't been bringing the fullest expression of myself to the table, and that was a mismatch. So I know very much that it can be really tempting to still continue to show up with this dimmed light. And it takes courage. It takes courage to go out there and risk being too much again. The risk of rejection that comes with being fully visible. To trust that the right people are out there even when we have not found them yet. That is like brave, that is courageous. But I just want to tell you that from the other side of that courage, it is so worth it, because the connections that come from showing up fully are incomparable to the connection that come from showing up as the edited version of yourself. And the edited version is never truly met. Only the real version can be truly, fully met. And being truly met after years of making yourself small is one of the most profound experiences there is. So you are not too much. You have just been around the wrong people. And you have been living in a world that has spent centuries working very hard to make you believe otherwise. That feared your wildness, that called it madness, that silenced your voice and called it appropriate, that tamed your power and called it refinement. It was not refinement, it was suppression. And you were never the problem. The right people, the ones who will not need you to be less, the ones who will meet the full version of you and want more rather than less, they exist. They are out there, and they are looking for someone exactly like you. So my petal, stop shrinking yourself while you wait to find them. Show up as the full version, the unedited version, the version with the wildest intact, the voice uncensored, the feelings unhidden, the power undiminished. Because somewhere out there is a room that this is exactly the right size for who you actually are. And you cannot find it whilst you're making yourself smaller to make everybody else more comfortable, whilst you're busy making yourself smaller enough to fit in all the wrong rooms. Thank you so much for listening to this episode, and I see you in the next one, my petals.